Hey everybody, this is Troy Rawlings, and this is the Spotlight with Troy Rawlings, live from Santa Monica, California, in a busy area, one of the nucleuses of Hollywood, with an amazing, young, new, I don't know if we can say new director, because
it's my second time
around.
So yeah, they still consider me new.
And he's got a little age on him. You would never know it when you see him, but we're sitting here with Mars Roberge. Originally from
Scarborough, which is a borough outside of Toronto. It's kind of like Brooklyn to New York, Brooklyn to Manhattan. Scarborough is, some people call it the Compton of Canada.
You do look like you have a little Compton. I was about to say, you look a little, you have that energy.
Yeah.
It's kind of Compton-ish.
Yeah, it's, growing up in Scarborough has allowed me to make films like this. And I guess my escape was... like Compton kids' escape is rap music. My escape was hardcore punk music, and that's kind of like all my idols from that period is what makes acting Scumbag actually today.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it. You said you got into DJing. When you DJed at first, was it more so? Is there a house music scene? Is there a club music scene, or more so punk and rock and 80s or 90s?
Well, it's interesting because Toronto has a huge house music scene. It always has.
Right.
And I stumbled upon like the goth clubs at the time, and that's what I gravitated to because it was the closest thing to the punk music I grew up with, but there wasn't clubs that played that stuff. So that's what I started in, but I ended up doing techno in New York eventually. So it's kind of like things kind of changed. Now I have a appreciation for house music, every kind of music, and when you're a DJ and you're doing that stuff, it becomes a profession. So you start meeting other people in the professions that might not be doing what you do, but we all kind of have a respect because we're all kind of lifers at one point doing this, and that was before laptops, we were DJs.
Way before.
Yeah.
So, do you still DJ a little bit? Or?
I do. Lately it's always out of town. Like I did something in New York, and I did stuff in Toronto, more reunion type stuff, but I'm kind of like a closet bedroom DJ or house DJ. Like I just practice in my house with vinyl all the time, but
it's soothing. It's like a
meditation for me.
Yeah. So let's jump into this. You're going to be a part of the CWN Funny Film Festival coming up for the movie Scumbag, which is not. You said it's not your first film. Well, first off, for those that don't know, give us a brief synopsis of what Scumbag is about.
So Scumbag is semi-autobiographical. It takes place during the 90s. It's based on a place in Toronto that doesn't exist anymore, a telemarketing company that was shut down for fraud. Wow. It's about a boy that needs a job, and the job essentially is going to cost him his life. He's a DJ. His name is Phil, and he needs a day job to pay the bills because the night job's not really cutting it. So he gets a job at a telemarketing company working with essentially crazy people, murderers, drug dealers, and just keeping up with these people for about a month's time causes him to be in jeopardy with the law, battle addiction, and try to save the only sane thing left in his life, which is his girlfriend, Christine. She's kind of his anchor, although she has a job working at a sex shop as a manager, but along with Nina Hartley, who plays a cougar in the sex shop, co-worker. But
for those that don't know who Nina Hartley is, Google her.
Yeah, on a PG level, you'll know her as William Macy's wife from the movie Boogie Nights.
Yes, that's probably the most PG thing she's done, actually.
Yeah,
and it's Boogie Nights, so that's pretty dark. So.
In our movie, actually.
In our movie, right?
Yeah.
This movie is based on your life.
During the 90s.
During the 90s. You went to film school. So you went to film school in the 90s. That was your motivation?
Yeah, I went to York University. And, it's just outside of Toronto. Not a lot of famous people graduated from that program, but it's considered one of the better film schools in Canada. It was the kind of thing where I'd walk down the hall and I'd be like going to school with all the kids from Degrassi Junior High, but like the older version of that Drake wasn't part of yet, you know?
Right.
The original cast and stuff. Right. So that was like our famous people that I was like going to school with and that.
The original Toronto 90210.
And I drank a lot eventually when I got to college and that, and I was able to to make a movie now because I got about 17 years of recovery. But back then I thought, didn't the guy, what's that filmmaker that does all those like anti-government documentaries? Come on, he's like really famous. No, that he's like a documentary filmmaker. Michael Moore. I could have swore that he was one of my lecturers at my school, but then I talked to one of my students, and they're like, "What, are you crazy? You never talked at her school?" I'm like, all these years I thought he talked at her school.
It seemed like Moore. It might have been a heavyset dude with glasses. And like, I swore Michael Moore told me get my life together.
Yeah, I guess our famous directors that passed through gave us lectures and taught my school was like the Canadian Bruce McDonald, who did like Highway 61. He's kind of famous in Canada, but not so much across the border. Maybe his most famous film was like Hardcore Logo. But yeah, so that's kind of. I went to film school, graduated in '95, came out, was an intern at a music video company, editing music videos for all these bands that. I guess like the bigger ones would be like Bare Naked Ladies and stuff when they were coming out, and putting phone numbers on infomercials, and somehow my boss said, "Do you want to party all the time or do you want a career?" Because I kept handing out these flyers for these like gothic clubs that I was doing. So I said, "I'll just got to use the washroom," and I left. And essentially walked into what is the movie Scumbag, and that's how the movie Scumbag came about. It's this awful job that I had where I was like trying to come to terms with life and not being ready to like become an adult yet, and wanting to be immature and have fun. And
you also said something. We talked a little bit before the interview, just personalize ourselves with one another. But you said something key. You said after recovery, you had something that I don't think a lot of people go through. And not talking to people who went through drugs and were in recovery. You said you had a total recall and could put together all the pieces of what actually happened. You could see it better after you recovered and you got it back and said, "Oh, I can write this fully," because it was.
Yeah, it is interesting because a long time ago in '95 when I graduated, actually '94 in my last year of film school and screenwriting, I was writing a script that was almost like the PG version of my film, and it was called Smog, and it was the main character's name was Smog. It was about a DJ, and like I never really got far with it, and then after all the life experiences I had where I almost didn't come back because of the booze and the clubs and everything. It took me from Toronto to New York, because I moved to New York in 2000. So what ended up happening was when I finally got recovery and a sense of reason, and I was decided, okay, now is the time. I'm ready to start doing this film stuff. It was like in 1 week I could remember everything verbatim that happened. And one of my actors, who's also a filmmaker, Nick Zed, said, "What, do you have a photographic memory? How did you notice?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It just all came back 1 week. I remembered everything, and I try to put it in a light that's true to what it was, so people are like, they might be offended by certain characters or whatever, but I'm like, no, all this really existed.
Right?
All these words really were said, and kind of like it was a blessing, because if I would have made this film when I was partying in that world,
it wouldn't have had
all the stuff that seemed interesting was a bunch of boring drunks sitting in a bar drinking or trying to get laid or something, and it wasn't that exciting. But now, from my perspective, I can pinpoint all the insanity and make a comedy out of it, because sane people can look at that and say, well, that's pretty insane, but it's pretty funny. Is that really going on? And I can laugh and say, yeah, that was insane. That is pretty funny. But when I was living it, it was a horror movie.
Right,
you know?
right. I was just laughing, that scared laugh. How am I gonna get out of here?
Yeah, I got to be able to look at things from different sides. I got to look at it from the sane point of view, the parent point of view, the crazy person's point of view. And when I'm living the experience, drinking a lot and stuff, all I can view is like maybe the crazy person's point of view, and it becomes kind of a dull film. This film.
You know what's funny? It reminds me, and this popped in my head when you said that. Have you ever seen the movie Half Baked that Dave Chappelle did?
I did. Unfortunately, I was half-baked when I saw it back then when it came out, and I don't remember anything about it.
And most people remember the comedy and stuff like that. And he said he did Half Baked, and he said when he saw the movie, he was like, wait, man, this is like a a kids movie on drugs. And it was funny because Half Baked is one of those comedies that people talk about as if it's like a cult comedy or something like that. But he said that wasn't his intent. But since he was high when he was making the film, he said when he looked back at it, he's like, that's not what, it's like a kids movie on drugs. That's not what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But it's weird because some people don't get a chance to do that. Some people, their creative juices are flowing, quote unquote, when they're getting high, when they're drinking, when they're doing different things, and they don't realize how it affects the product or the project. You know, we see certain things, and I was like, you can't tell me that Stanley Kubrick, when he did Clockwork Orange, he wasn't on something. But at the same time, you had a total recall. You came back, and this wasn't your first film.
No, I did a film before that, that I shot in 2006 and finished in 2012. A documentary on the Sex and the City stylist Patricia Field. Is called The Little House That Could. But that was more like home movie cameras and running around shooting stuff and turning SD into HD because HD wasn't around yet.
Right.
And it was a glorified home movie with topics that weren't discussed. So it was fun. It kind of carries a LGBT torch around the world for the whole drag queen communities and stuff that I captured in this movie. But Scumbag was the first thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to write this film, I'm going to cast it, I'm going to shoot it, I'm going to pick my cameraman, we're going to do this as good as we can, this is planned as good as we can plan it. And that was like, so it's really like my first scripted feature film.
Right. Now Scumbag, did you do most of that movie where did you do most of the movie? Canada, New York, here?
Mainly Los Angeles, okay. Burbank, but we shot one day in New York, and we also did post-audio production in Toronto, as well as my publicist was from Toronto. So, but I'd say it was mainly done in LA, and the only reason I shot it in New York is one of my actors is Michael Alec, and there's a movie about him called The Party Monster. Macaulay Culkin plays him.
Oh wow! Right.
And I don't know if you remember, but he was the club kid that ran the limelight in New York during the '90s, and he went to jail for murdering a promoter, chopping up his body and putting him in the river. Jeez. Now I'm telling you, it's not like, hey, I'm dying to put.
Wait. You said he was in the movie?
Yeah, I just wanted you to say I'm not one of these guys that's like, I'm dying to put Charles Manson in my movie. I'm not a weirdo like that, Right. But Kiyoki, one of my DJ friends, he's also depicted in that movie, The Party Monster, is my good friend, and I asked him to be in my movie, and Kiyoki used to date Michael Alec back in the day. They were boyfriends, and I guess when he got out of jail after being in jail for 17 years, he was staying with him. And being a person from recovery myself, I believe in giving people a second chance. And before I know it, I got put on the phone with him, who was kind of asking if he could be in my movie, and Kiyoki was kind of saying, this kind of new leaf, give this guy a chance and stuff. And I had to really think about it, and I said, okay, let's do this, and it ended up, costing me some friends, and I can't say in hindsight I did the right thing or the wrong thing. He definitely played the character right. He plays like a scumbag boss at a telemarketing company, a nerdy boss. There were issues that came up with filming him, like the week before we got to film him, or maybe the month. He finds out that his parole officer won't let him leave the state of New York. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? You're in the movie. So where I work is Nomad Editing Company, and they have an office in New York. So my boss there said we could shoot in the office in New York, and I would have to cast more people from the office and basically do a Three's Company thing. I don't know if people watch that show, Three's Company, but Chrissy Snow.
My all-time favorite. Chrissy was.
Well, Suzanne Summers had a big fight falling out with the cast and the crew back then in the day because I think she wanted to charge too much money. So nobody wanted to work with her, and she didn't want to work with anybody. So they would shoot all her scenes separate, and they would bring in the actors the next day, and they would just talk across the room back and forth, even though they didn't act together. So I did the same thing with Scumbag. So half the office scenes are shot in New York and in LA. and I color corrected it to make it look like people are talking back and forth across the office, and that's how Michael Alec is in the scene. And the only person I had to like combine was the main actor, Princess Frank. He had to fly to New York and do some of the scenes down there, but I staged it where it looks like you're walking from one side of the office to the other, but you're really walking from LA to New York and back and
in a couple minutes. He's got fast.
And that's how that all happened.
So I gotta ask you this: who are your influences? You and I know we don't have a lot of time because we're actually live on scene in Santa Monica. But who are some of your influences? Like what you just said. I know you study a lot of film in film school, and you hear about all kinds of techniques and ways to how to get it done. So who are some of your major influences when it comes to directing or filmmaking? Who are some people you look at and say, I love what they do? And it could be Canadian,
I definitely it's different for everything.
Right.
And I know when I wanted to do this movie and make it very cartoon like because the characters are very animated.
Right.
I went to the people I studied when I was in film school, and the people I was studying in film school was Spike Lee, Tarantino, because they had just hit right when we were going, so they were the talk, they were changing stuff. So for me, like I remember telling my DP Toma, this guy from Italy, I want the look like a Spike Lee film where he calls it the face, where I want like their image in the camera like a face, you know, like those old Nike Mars Blackman commercials. Right. So visually, like, hey. She's got to have it. Visually, I wanted that. And then with the amount of characters, I liked the movie Kids with Harmony Korine. He's probably my favorite these days because he's one of the only filmmakers that kind of doesn't care about the Hollywood conventional cinema. He just does whatever he wants, and you either follow it or you don't. And he has ADD too, so he might drift off and do something and put an experimental movie in the middle of his film. And I like that because it allowed me to do whatever I want. And then Tarantino, I respected because he was the first one that showed me you can do an action film but have dialogue like a Woody Allen film in the middle of it. Before that, it was like you have to do the Woody Allen film. Could be boring to some people or intellectual to others, or you do the action film. You can't do both. Dialogue, there's no both. You know, so
punchline here and there.
So
no dialogue.
That all played a big part in making this film. You know, definitely. And I always liked the French New Wave filmmakers like Jean-Luc Godard, because what I liked about him is he had his film going on, but he would subliminally put things in the background all the time, like a guy goes and shoots a toy dog on the street in the middle of the scene. It has absolutely nothing to do with the scene, never comes back in the scene, and you wonder, what was that? And I put a lot of secret things in this film, and because there's 220 cast members, even the cast that watch it, they notice stuff every time more, and some of the things they're not sure, and there's like puzzles I put in there. I did it on purpose because I just wanted, I don't know, I get bored.
Now say that again. How many cast members? Actually, and when he says cast members, people, we're talking about people with speaking roles.
Speaking roles, 220. And you know,
like an Angels and Demons set.
220 cast members and probably like 10 crew members. You know, it was crazy. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, cast members. Hold this for us.
Yeah.
While you're over there, can you guys hold up this?
Oh, actually, there were some cast members that did sound at times. There were, people helped out where they could.
Even though these are two different films, the first film you did was a documentary. It took you 6 years to do it.
Yeah, it's just me and one guy.
You and one guy doing your thing. This movie
took a year.
Based on a true story. How much of it you say is true to form, true to life?
About 90%.
Right.
And
so damn near a documentary.
I didn't smoke crack. I never smoked crack. There's some crack smoking in the movie. Oh. That was, I guess, made for the film.
Right.
But you know, and some of the characters are based on real life people. But sometimes I combine like two people to make one character. So I'd say it's about 90% true. Everything in this film.
You being from Canada. You told me some interesting things about making films in Canada. Do you think that played a role at all in how you make films?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't have luck making films in Canada because you have to follow the grant system. That's the only way you can get money to make movies up there. And to follow the grant system, it's kind of a monopoly run by like a grant mafia. Like they get the 5 people that have been giving out the grants to their friends for like the last 30 years. And unless you go to a certain school and you have those connections, it's pretty hard to break the system. So I looked up to certain filmmakers like David Cronenberg, the maker of The Fly and Naked Lunch, because he was one of the few that, I guess during the 70s in Canada, you could get kickbacks being a private investor from dentists and stuff, but they ended that. So he like ran with that and did a lot of crazy horror films, and that were and used famous musicians like Deborah Harry and stuff in his films, and,
Right.
and it worked. He had a cult following, but now it's really hard to do that in Canada because there has to be a certain amount of Canadian content to get the grants, a certain amount of people, and I love the Canadians and I love this. There's a lot of talent up there, but there's no Drakes of acting up there that haven't moved to Hollywood. Like they're all here, you know.
Right.
So you're kind of limited. It's not like I'm gonna go and get a grant in Canada and call up Dan Aykroyd and say, hey, can you come from Hollywood and be in this film for $1,000? It's not gonna happen. They want me to have like the after school special people that nobody in America are gonna care about later.
Right.
The music scene up there is finally got it. Like they're finally like, wow, Drake did his thing, people like it, Arcade Fire did their thing, Peaches do their thing, and now the censorship boards are like, well, we're not going to censor this stuff so much because like the music's doing really well. Unfortunately, these guys are signed to American labels and not bringing money to Canada, but like I wish the film industry would see that and let the filmmakers just make good films and give out money for for that instead of like the same 5 people for like 20 years. So I wanted to run as far away from that system as I could and just do things that I want. And now I'm circling back to Canada, and like the Canadians are all about it. They support it. And I tend to play this one film festival in Toronto called Censored in Canada, and it's for Canadians that have basically been censored by the Canadian film industry. They can't get into the film festivals up there. They don't get because of the connections or with the content, and there's a whole film festival dedicated to us, and I always play it there.
This has been awesome, Mars. We're going to wrap this up. Last couple things. And how in the world, with the content, well, you mentioned some good people. You mentioned Spike Lee and Quentin. One of the things they have effectively done is putting in dialogue, like you said, in their movies, even though it's a dramatic movie or action movie, that makes it very relatable and comical. So, but how do you think Scumbag became a comedy? You said it shocked you that when people were watching it, it was
just basically the humor is very sarcastic. All these guys have these negative, sarcastic comments on each other all the time in the office that people were laughing at. That really essentially became the comedy, and there was a lot of tragic events because of all their drunken debaucheries that were comical,
Right.
in the movie. So that it became a comedy. But there's another aspect to the movie too, where sometimes there's about 3 scenes where people just break into song. People are like, this isn't a musical. What's going on here? And I got tired of saying, well, yeah, it's not a musical. I want to do it because I want to do that. So I call it a rocktopia, where the definition is protagonist struggle against the ideals of a utopian society where the only form of escapism is to rock out. So every now and then, like the characters, I made rules to it. I did like a bunch of rules to be a rocktopia. One of them is you have to have over 200 cast members.
Right.
The songs have to be written by the cast that are singing it, and that you have to put musicians playing roles that are not true to themselves as who they are. And I just made a whole doctrine because people are going to start using this name. They've got to make it a little hard for people to just go and make a rocktopia. So that was it. It was like kind of influenced by MTV, because all my years of editing music videos and like for those that don't know what it is that we've gotten compared to like Mulholland Drive or whatever. Like they say, like this is very David Lynch, where they break into songs like Blue Velvet or whatever. So I'm like, well, if they want to compare it to that, that's cool. I like him, I'm not trying to do that.
It's something. It seemed like older movies, black and whites, and not just racist, actual black and white films. Because some people are like, what is black and white? The film used to be in black and white.
That's why I say dark comedy too, because I say black comedy and they think I'm talking about like barbershop or something. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy. They pushed every envelope. They did everything. Like you couldn't see a movie and then not be singing, dancing, and it definitely wasn't called a musical. It was a movie. 2 years from now, where would you like to be? Where do you see yourself being 2 years from now?
Ideally, I would love to just be doing this full time. This is my job, making movies. I have a day job. You know, I got to be realistic. I've been realistic about everything. How like that was, I think, how I was able to make this film. I don't set goals that aren't within my own reach. You know, a lot of people, they make the mistake. They got to try to do this SAG union A-list actor film as their first film, and it's like, well, good luck getting those millions of dollars. And I know I can do this right now. So I can see myself doing another film along the lines of Scumbag. 2 years from now. I kind of have a goal. I want to shoot 2 films at the same time because I'm really good at first ADing my own stuff, planning out stuff. I always felt like if I had one more week in some of the same locations, same city, and same crew, I would have been able to do another film. So I see myself actually shooting a movie in 2 years from now, and I see it being shot in New York for some reason. And the budget will be a little bit better than it is. You know, it might not be a lot better, or it might be a lot better, but you know, I just want to keep doing movies, and I feel like I'm making up for a lot of lost time from being out there pursuing bands and DJing for 20 years now. It's like I just graduated from 95 last year, and I'm like, all right, I'm calling up my film school friends. I'm doing this. What's new? I don't know. I've had kids. I left the industry. I'm a real estate agent. Like, what do you want? You know? Yeah, it's been like that. There's like maybe like 2 guys from my class that are still pursuing filmmaking, but yeah, I'm all now. It's a good time for me. I'm ready to start doing this. You know,
it is an industry that, and by the looks of things, you'll be around for a long time. And like you said, you're not encapsulated into one genre. You want to do all genres.
I want to do all genres, every genre. Like
But Mars Roberge. Roberge?
Yeah, you have it right.
He said one of his, what is it? One of your crew members still don't know how to say your name.
Yeah, they don't know how to spell it, Thomas. Don't know how to spell it. I can say your name, Thomas, by reading you, but you don't know how to spell my name. It's Roberge. I love you though.
Congratulations on the CWN Funny Film Festival and everything else that's going on, and congratulations on Scumbag, and soon Scumbag has distribution, so soon it'll be out there in digital land.
Yeah, actually we signed with Byron Allen's company, the new owner of the Weather Channel.
Don't be surprised if you don't see Scumbag on
the weather is bad. The weather is bad.
Remember.
Yeah. So we're with his company called Freestyle Digital Media, and it's going to be available on 13 of the major platforms May 1st in North America. And I'm really excited because I just got off the phone with a guy from England today, and we just got a theatrical deal in the UK. So it's not. So yeah, with rscreen.com. So it's like a theater by demand program. We're a part of their platform. So if you're like, you live in London and you want to see Scumbag, you can request to see it, and as long as enough people buy tickets, it will play there. But if not enough people buy tickets, you'll get refunded, kind of like Kickstarter. So nobody loses. Yeah. And we're talking to a company that does the same thing in Spain right now too. So yeah, and otherwise, as far as seeing it in theaters, you're gonna have to see it at places like Comedy Film Festival. You know, Vegas in 2 nights. 2 nights from now, Nevada premiere.
April 11th, Wednesday,
9 p.m.
April 11th, 9 p.m. in Las Vegas at the Eclipse Theaters. We'll have some more information about that in the link after this. Mars, thank you for taking time out at this impromptu
Thank you, Troy.
meeting here in Hollywood.
Cool. Well, thanks, Troy, for having me.
Amazing. You're tuned into the Spotlight, and our Spotlight today was with Mars Roberge, filmmaker of the movie Scumbag. Check it out.
Scumbag-movie.com.